For centuries, you've had this one image of how ancient people built things, right? Just pure brute force. Thousands of guys, simple tools, and a whole lot of muscle. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the biggest secret wasn't buried in the ground, but was floating in the air all along? Okay, seriously, think about that for a second. Could they move stones that weigh more than a jumbo jet? With just sound? Because if the answer is yes, then everything we think we know about the ancient world gets flipped completely upside down. It sounds like pure sci-fi, but the clues, man, they're everywhere. First, let's just get our heads around the numbers we're talking about because they are insane. This is the Trilithon at Baalbek in Lebanon. These are 3 solid blocks of stone, and each one weighs around 800 tons. To put that in perspective, our biggest modern mobile cranes struggle to lift something like that. And it's not just about the raw weight, right? It's where they put these things. Inside the Great Pyramid, the ceiling of the King's Chamber is made of these massive granite beams. Some of them weigh 70 tons each. And they didn't just slide them into place, they lifted them over 60 meters straight up into the air. How? Then you have the absolute madness of the precision. In Peru, at a place called Sacsayhuamulon, you have these 200-ton stones that are fit together so perfectly you can't even slide a piece of paper between them. I mean, how do you get that kind of accuracy with something that heavy? So, just to be clear, we're talking about lifting the weight of 2 fully loaded 747 jumbo jets. And the official explanation we get? Ropes, ramps, and a ton of people pulling. You know, at a certain point, that answer just doesn't feel like it's enough, does it? And this is where the story takes a hard left turn into the weird. Because when you stop looking at the mainstream history books, and you start looking at the actual legends from these ancient cultures that had no contact with each other, a really strange pattern starts to show up. So, check this out. In Bolivia, local legends say the stones for their ancient cities were literally carried through the air to the sound of a trumpet. You jump halfway across the planet, and Mayan legends in Mexico say a temple was built by dwarfs who could move rocks just by whistling. Go over to ancient Greece, same deal. The myth of Amphion says he built the walls of a city by playing his lyre, and the stones just got up and followed him into place. 3 different continents, 3 separate peoples, all telling the exact same impossible story. Now, it's easy to just say, okay, cool stories, but they're just myths, right? Except, this idea doesn't just stay in the past. It pops up again in surprisingly detailed eyewitness accounts from the 20th century. Accounts that almost sound like a blueprint for how this could have actually worked. Back in the 1930s, a Swedish doctor said he watched Tibetan monks shift huge boulders onto a cliff 250 meters high. And what makes his story so freaky is how specific it is. He said they set up 13 drums and 6 long trumpets in a perfect arc around the stone. They started chanting and drumming, and after about 4 minutes of this intense, focused sound, the giant rock would start to shake, and then just lift off the ground, flying in an arc to the top of the cliff. And believe it or not, that's not the only story like this. Around the same time, in Florida of all places, this one tiny guy named Edward Leedskalinen built something called the Coral Castle. He weighed about 100 pounds, and he single-handedly moved over 1,100 tons of rock. When people asked him how he did it, he just said, "I know the secrets of the pyramid builders." Okay, so we have the impossible buildings, we have these ancient myths from all over the world, and we have these wild modern eyewitness accounts. So we have to ask the big question. Is any of this actually possible? Can you really use sound to beat poverty? Let's see what modern science says. And the answer, incredibly, is yeah, kind of. It's a real thing called acoustic levitation. Scientists can do it in labs right now. Basically, you use powerful sound waves to create these fixed pockets of high and low pressure in the air. If you put a small object in one of those pockets, it just floats. And this isn't just theory. As this physicist, Wenjun Xie, asked, what happens if you put something alive in there? Well, they've done it. Scientists have successfully used sound to levitate ants, spiders, even little fish just floating in midair. It's a proven fact. And right there, for a second, it feels like we've cracked it. The mystery is solved, the legends were true, this is how they did it, it's actually possible. But, and yeah, this is a huge but, there is the problem of scale. See, to flow a tiny drop of water in a lab, you need about 150 decibels. That's already louder than a jet engine right next to your head. To lift a multi-ton stone block, you would need something way, way beyond that. You would need a sound wave blasting at over 194 decibels. And that specific number is a hard wall. It's the absolute physical limit for a sound wave in our atmosphere. If you try to make a sound any louder than that, the low pressure part of the wave becomes a total vacuum, and the sound wave literally destroys itself. So, based on what we know today, it seems impossible. Case closed. Well, not so fast. Because even if floating giant stones turns out to be a myth, this whole investigation digs up something else. A deeper secret. Something that is verifiable and maybe even more profound. Ancient builders had an incredibly sophisticated understanding of sound. Maybe moving stones wasn't even the main point. This brings us to a really cool field called archaeoacoustics. Scientists started taking sound equipment to ancient sites, and what they found is just wild. Take Newgrange in Ireland. It's a massive tomb, older than the pyramids, and it turns out it was specifically engineered to act like a giant speaker, amplifying certain low-frequency sounds. And they found a magic number, a resonant frequency of around 110 hertz. And here's the crazy part. This same frequency keeps popping up all over the world, in underground temples in Malta, and ancient chambers in Peru. All across the globe, builders were tuning their most sacred sites to this one exact pitch. That cannot be a coincidence, so it begs a new question. Why? What was so special about 110 hertz? Well, it turns out the answer isn't in the stones, it's actually inside your skull. A study at UCLA put people in an MRI machine and had them listen to different frequencies, and they discovered that 110 hertz does something pretty dramatic to the human brain. It consistently quiets down the left side, the part you use for language and logic, and fires up the right side, the part associated with emotion, intuition, creativity, and altered states of consciousness. So, let's just recap the evidence. We've got the motive, these impossible structures. We've got the legends, a worldwide pattern of stories about sound. We've got the eyewitnesses, modern accounts from Tibet and Florida. We've got the science, acoustic levitation is real, even if we can't scale it yet. And we have the hard evidence. Ancient sites are literally tuned to a frequency that changes the way you think. And that changes everything. It reframes the entire mystery. Maybe the legends weren't literal. Or maybe the technology to alter consciousness was the real goal, and moving stones was just a side effect. What if the true purpose of this lost science wasn't just to move stones, but to move minds? Look, we can't prove they were floating 800-ton walks through the air. But the evidence is pretty undeniable that they possessed a deep, practical science of sound, a technology that can manipulate not only the physical world, but human consciousness itself. And that's a science that we are only just beginning to rediscover.